really glad so many people have joined. And, you know, there's a lot of information that I share, and a lot of it might be hard to assimilate, but there is a big intent here in what I'm sharing, and it has to do with rehabilitation. It has to do with repairing our DNA architecture and understanding what it's going to take. And so I touch upon a lot of things in our galactic history, and because it's such a vast history and it covers or spans so many millions of years, you know, it can be hard to sort of, you know, process. But the thing is, your intuition will hear it, your unconscious self will hear it, and it'll begin to switch on some of these areas of yourself that have been sort of asleep. And then it'll be able to, I don't know, help with an activation, helps to sort of put everything in some sort of order. And it might take a couple weeks to process. It might be an integration process you don't even notice that's happening. But that is really the intent that I'm holding. And it's always important to hold intent before one presents anything. And that is my intent, is to help to rebuild this, you know, architecture, to be in touch with our divine template, the sacred union template of the masculine and feminine, and to really connect with what is beyond this net and that 0 point unified field, and what this window period represents as far as our capacity to access it in ways that we haven't been able to for thousands of years. And so I'm sharing the difficult stuff, though. It's very important that we understand what's, you know, trying to get in the way and what it's going to take from all of us to override these attempts. And so anyway, if certain things don't make sense, just give it a little bit of time, because as I get towards the middle of this particular presentation and towards the end, you'll see some charts and some things that really relate to you and, you know, what we're made of, that architecture we're looking to awaken and repair. But just some of the historical events, just to frame it around, you know, a history that has been noted from many sources, like Keelantic science, Ashiana DN, connected to that particular science, and also Lisa Renee with energeticsynthesis.com, and the freedom teachings that are associated with that. Also whistleblower testimony, my own personal experiences, and just, yeah, just a lot of different downloads coming throughout my life. And so that's where it's at. So I don't know, I hope my video started, but I'm going to get my presentation up. And I'm going to reframe some things that I talked about yesterday for people who might not have been there yesterday, to sort of open it up, you know, by bringing in some of those intro slides that I started with, to take it, you know, kind of to the next level for today. Okay. So let me get it on the share screen. So I'm going into what we need to understand and seek for in terms of like disclosure. But I want to kind of revisit the beginning of the presentation from yesterday, because the beginning sort of is a good intro to, you know, kind of the larger picture condensed in a bit of a summary that I've been sort of describing with some of the events that have taken place. But basically, this world was far less dense than it is today. And when we dealt with rebellions, fallen angelics, galactic wars, cataclysms, and the collapse of the higher dimensional civilizations caused by exploding planets, that rapidly changed our form. And there's many, many events, and these events go into, you know, where we are, you know, currently. But the history that we have lost is when we were in the Lyran system and the higher earth energies, 7D earth, the 5D. I mean, basically the full 12-strand capacity broken up into different harmonic universes connects us with different experiences we've had on the timeline. So we can be incarnating into the human experience from different places on these timelines, and different levels. And it's not so much linear. It has to do with sort of these dimensional bands of energy that our consciousness holds connection to. But a lot has been like pulled into this earth, though, and that's why so many different types of beings are here on earth that have taken human form in order to help us to rebuild our DNA, because we need to share the codes. But as far as like our galactic memories and the things that we've experienced, we're all coming in from sort of different, you know, places. and retrieving memories, awakening what's dormant, and allowing like one another to be the great activators. And that's what I'm going to get into too, is how the dark agendas or the cabal and these negative, you know, control systems, you know, are trying to make that really hard. You know, so sacred union's been targeted, unity consciousness has been targeted, because the end goal really is that we're able to switch on dormant strands of DNA through coming together. But because of these wars, because of the false flag of the wars that we've experienced on Earth, and our inability to understand the roots of them, we're very much vulnerable to the trigger events that cause us to blame one another or turn against one another, when really the whole idea of coming into this experience is to rebuild our DNA architecture through unity consciousness. So yeah, I'll get into that. But yes, we were dealing with the abuse of free will, hybridization, the manipulation of incarnate consciousness, and the manipulation of our DNA. It has made it so much more difficult to maintain a multidimensional embodiment and connection to spirit because of all that's taken place in our galactic history while in physical form. In this profound window period, we have the opportunity to return to these higher planes of existence. So I spent a lot of time yesterday talking about the net and the frequency fences and how we've been cut off from being able to easily connect with our higher awareness and also the 0-point unified field due to dark technologies, reversals, and all sorts of mechanisms that, you know, like are really like just affecting our capacity to, you know, make that direct connect. And I'm going to be revisiting a bit of that today, but somebody had asked a question, so I wanted to include this slide about the different like seedings of life on Earth. So starting in the world 3, when we came into this particular Earth experience, that's when the 12 tribes were seeded, and our chakra system relates to that, but it also goes into the cosmic trinity, where we see the 13, 14, and 15, which is the mother arc, the father arc, and the Christ Sophia. And that's the template of like our true, you know, connection to source and how that is built in us. And so that's why we often hear about, you know, our human potential as being, you know, God or an expression of God, but we get so caught in the lower creator God forces and the different things that have influenced us that a lot of the teaching has come through distortions and through the Anunnaki lower creator gods, and how texts and, you know, ancient texts have been manipulated and distorted. And our own capacity to understand how to do soul alchemy and become Christed beings has become lost to us because of their basically their attack on the Christ Templars, the Essenes, the Law of One teachings, and the recognition of the feminine Holy Spirit and our connection to the mother. So all these distorted teachings and all that's been destroyed has put us in this difficulty of not only having amnesia, but absorbing, you know, these things in and having it like hold us to an artificial template, which is connected to this fence, and also the infiltration of the natural circuitry of Gaia with this overlay of this other template that is in reversal codes. And the reversal codes cause aging, cause us to live a much shorter lifespan, and it keeps us locked in a time loop because we never, you know, kind of break the barrier when we can't have any, like when we don't have any conception of it, we don't have any reminders of it. And so that loss of those, you know, kind of teachings have made it, you know, very difficult, but it's built into us. I mean, we hold that whole, it's all encoded in us, and our consciousness can reach these levels and begin to step it down into the physical form to create the repair work. And it's encoded in cosmic and natural law. It's encoded in the planetary consciousness. It's encoded in our soul matrix that we're very in touch with. So the personality matrix, sorry, I'm getting all these weird notifications and noises, but I don't know where that's coming from. Okay. Okay, so that kind of dropped me out of my train of thought. But the whole point is we have come into this experience to rebuild. So the 12 tribes were broken down into 7 root races, some who were seated on Gaia in the higher dimensions. The first root race is Polaris, the second is Hyperborea, and that's connected to 7D Gaia. And somebody wanted me to talk a little bit more about the Electric Wars. But then there's the root races of Lemurians, which ended in a Holocaust, and the Atlanteans, which had all these, cataclysmic events that really started the cycle of us really just losing our connection with our galactic memories and the rest of ourselves. So after the electrical wars, the Earth was almost a goner. A slight pole shift took place, floods, ice age destroyed life on Earth, until the Brunel introduced a treaty. Now, the rescue mission was only allowed to occur via death, reincarnation, and DNA development. Another flood happened after this, and things were stunted for a long period of time. And then seals were put in place to stop any DNA mutations getting through to Tara. So when we look at quarantine, when we look at seals, some of them were put in place for us to learn the right use of power since these higher systems had fallen. We are tasked with certain lessons as humans in order to regain access. So this is part of the initiatory processes that we need to go through. And the outer planets are actually encoded in these initiatory processes that we experience in our lifetime. So what we experience in our zodiac map that we're given, we have our own personal zodiac map, and what the alignments are on a larger scale level hold that greater intelligence of how we can do this, because it holds the repair work, just like the Venus transits hold the corrections. And so all these cosmic and earthly events are taking place to create these corrections, but we're being yanked constantly into like distraction. But so the Galactic science, talks about electrical wars, which we don't learn about in our history books, but a new seeding had to take place after this. And root races were created to pick up codes from other root races. There's 7 root races in all, and there's 5 cloister races, which represent star seeds. And I talked about this yesterday, 7 plus 5 makes 12. So our ability to work together and activate each other and embrace diversity is absolutely key. And when we look at the world, which is wanting us to be in these race wars, wanting us to resent one another because of our past histories, and to just be in this reactive state of, blame and victimhood, is what we need to recognize and overcome, because that is what stunts our growth. When we allow an outer force to stunt our growth, we're giving our power away to something else. And that's actually something we see in the medical industries. And I'm going to get into that, about how physical symptoms of the body can actually bring us closer together, and how all adversity can bring us closer to ourselves. It can initiate alchemy and transformation. But in this reversal kind of system, it wants adversity to weaken us. It wants it to, cause us to externalize everything and expect something outside of ourselves to, give us the command of, what we should do, right? So that we're obedient and we comply and consent to something that's being presented that is actually seeking to enslave us more. And so the beautiful part of our experience here on Earth is that we're learning to fall back on each other more. We're learning to understand how these power structures and systems have been put in place to harvest our energies and to hold us into an addiction matrix that keeps us looping in duality. And so we really need to, break all that. So I just wanted to mention a little bit about the electrical wars, because somebody asked some questions about it. But just to revisit something that I said yesterday, the seedings of the root races on this planet have been to reassemble the original DNA and reclaim that which was lost in the Lyran Wars with the Orion group. The 12-tree grid was designed to help reassemble the original avatar DNA of the human being in the lower harmonic universes and reclaim all aspects back into wholeness. So what's always important to do, because some of this information can make a person almost like, okay, it gets a little bit, it can go over people's head, is to bring it into simplicity and to bring it to something that's relatable, right? So in our own personal lifestyles and just our life experience and the tragedies that we go through and the losses that we, go through and the things that we're, required to overcome in order to be whole and healed and on track with our spiritual path to actually move out of negative patterning and experience a life where our dreams can be manifested and we find that we're connecting with like-minded people and soulmates. I mean, a lot of us have lived that path on a personal level. Now we're being pulled into a collective challenge. And we're facing something on a much more macro level, asked to, do the same sort of thing in a much larger way. And that has to do with letting go of the old paradigm, the abusiveness of the old paradigm, and the attachments that we have formed with individuals that we might have looked up to that hold a lot of darkness, behind them. And so when we see all this beginning to collapse, like a lot, going on in Hollywood and the political systems of understanding, crimes against humanity, and, the underbelly or just certain aspects of, the religious constructs and different, hidden, cults that operate behind them, it makes it look like a really, really scary world. But it's helping us to see that we have to learn to fall back on ourselves. And the more we have given our power away due to experiencing so many wars and traumas is something we have to break. And we're being asked to break through this wound that we've been born into to find more spiritual maturity and more transparency in facing those wounds within ourselves and working on those things within ourselves so that these trigger events don't cause us to constantly battle one another. Because in our deeper knowingness, we have come here to connect, to rebuild, to rehabilitate, and to find, true unity consciousness without giving up our individuality. And we need that sovereignty in place before we're really able to do it in a productive way. As we see with a lot of movements, it might appear to have a unified purpose or intent, but there's always an opposition. There's always something that it's attacking or going after. And we have to understand more, the puppeteers behind the scenes. And a lot of people are already well aware of it. But our role here on Earth is, basically soul development, spiritual development, and understanding enough of our galactic history to know that this is what we're tasked with. We're in a free will universe, and so we need to learn the right use of power. And so the lessons of ego, are incredibly important. And getting more sovereignty in our mental bodies is so important, because the mind basically creates our reality. Our mind feeds our ego information that is our power center that takes action in things. And these fragmented parts of ourselves are not operating from our higher guidance and our intuition. It is being pulled into, something that could be very, very destructive and actually achieve the opposite of what we think we might be striving for. Because deep down, I know we all want the same thing. But I know that the humanity, we're not enemies to each other. That's all been cast upon us. And it's been indoctrinated into us. Our history books have not given us the full picture. And so a lot of these trigger events that we're seeing in the world today are to light up those unconscious traumas from the past, where, we're still maybe holding on to historical resentments because of the ways these wars were played out, when in actual fact, it was done on purpose to pit root races against each other so that we wouldn't be able to rebuild the architecture of our DNA. And so as long as we're in fragments, we will be easily controlled, because a wounded person that's not conscious of those wounds and is unconscious to the history that has been robbed from us is going to seek some sort of relief. And we're learning to rebuild, a sense of self-esteem based on our own, doing it on our own terms, not what we've been taught. Not what we've been taught to become. And this is why it's so difficult for people, because their sense of identity has been hijacked into the social engineering programs and the mind control. And a lot of those that were born authentic or true to who they were or connected with their higher abilities, have been very much projected upon and targeted, and sort of becoming a label or that people can kind of laugh at and create distance from, instead of understanding that, they're the great activators. And so that whole sort of, oh, it's a conspiracy theorist or it's woo-woo stuff, just doesn't even allow a person to become curious because of the way it's portrayed in the media. And of course, the media is the biggest mind control weapon that exists, the mainstream media. But when we remember what the main purpose of us being here, it's to rebuild, it's to heal a wound, and these wounds are ancient. So the Lyran system is where it began, of this level of attack, where free will allowed this ego construct to separate itself to the point of being service to self, and then wanting to infiltrate those that had a direct connect with source, so that it begins to morph into their dark agenda. And that's why a lot of people have, kind of signed up for this, because there's a facade in our society, and even, the roots of it go way deeper, to provide some sort of like reward system. And so it all looks kind of harmless on the outside until you begin to lift away the layers. And once we lift away the layers, we see how much it's sabotaging our capacity to do this repair work.
Portal to Ascension proudly presents the second annual conference at sea. Step aboard the Celebrity Infinity for Mystery School at Sea, an extraordinary 10-day voyage through the mystical lands of ancient Greece and Turkey, sailing from March 20th to 30th, 2026. Journey through the sacred sites of the ancients: Nafplio, Heraklion, Rhodes, Kavala, Thessaloniki, Ephesus, Athens, and more, where cosmic wisdom, lost civilizations, and divine knowledge converge. Featuring world-renowned authors, researchers, and channelers, guiding you into the deep memory of these sacred lands, unlocking past lives, sacred geometry, and the hidden consciousness of the ages. Immerse yourself in transformative lectures, hands-on workshops, and exclusive special events, each custom-tailored to help you remember that you are an initiate of the Mystery School. This isn't just a cruise, it's a portal to higher awareness, an awakening to the wisdom encoded in your soul. Are you ready to remember?